for the first time on the video podcast, the one and only Justin Conway. Can we get an applause today?
Y'all finally got me.
I'm so glad you're here, buddy. And what a topic today for us to discuss. And nobody better to do it than you. And man, you've had some interns this summer?
I have had some interns.
You're
right.
That's been awesome. We love our intern program, and just finished up our last intern for the summer with Lincoln Enzi.
Mm-hmm.
That was right after Jocelyn Mack from Indianapolis, and so it's been fun, man. You've had some good ones.
I have. I've been blessed. Started the year off with Brock, and then transitioned into, ironically, to IBC students back to back. And so, yeah, they were a joy to have here the last, probably together 13 to 14 straight weeks. So
yes.
it's
in a busy season too.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the summer they've been a blessing. I was talking to Lincoln's parents yesterday, just telling them, you know, how awesome it's been to have their son here, and I told them he's been such a blessing, but hopefully we've been a blessing, you know, to him as well.
Absolutely.
That's why we love this intern program. It's kind of like grandparents. They can get the kids over, but they can send them home.
That's right.
And so we send these folks back home to do great things in their local church or where they're planted at the time. So yesterday was awesome.
It was a great service.
Phenomenal worship experience, move of God, just unlike I've experienced in a while at our local church, and I'm so thankful for that. And I just want to say at the outset, if you're tuning in with us today on Woodlawn Talks, thank you for being a return listener or a first-time guest. We welcome you to the podcast today, and we want to be a blessing to those that listen to this, that watch this, wherever you are, wherever you find yourself serving in ministry or in business. It doesn't matter. Make this your best day yet. So Sunday was a day where I was prepared to preach, and then God just took over. And, you know, I know every church is different, but that happens maybe one or two times a year here at Woodlawn. If it happens more, that's great. And then at the same time, we know, you know, the word is so important, and so we don't push for that to happen, but we have to understand and recognize when it does happen. And so we're going to just call, you know, today's podcast, you know, do you flow or do you go? Flow or go? I think our wonderful creative Nathaniel Rippey came up with with that topic today. But it's where we are. You know, I was thinking even, you know, as I was coming into the office today, like we didn't preach. So what is the podcast? And I was thinking, I told Val when I got to the office today, you know, can we talk about moving with the Spirit, you know, flowing with the Spirit? Ironically enough, Justin, you saw my notes that I was going to preach. The title of my sermon for Sunday was Flow in the Anointing.
Mm-hmm.
And God did that without me having to even bring the word to illustrate what we meant by that. So in your context as the worship pastor of this church, what does that mean to you? Flow or go?
Well, yeah. So for us, you know, there's always going to be a plan, you know. We want our people to be prepared for what could happen in a worship service. And so, yes, there's going to be song selection and stuff like that. But we also want them to understand that in those moments, we want to make sure that, as the old saying goes, you don't schedule God out of the service. And yesterday was a great example of that. I will say that internally for me, last week was just totally different for me. Um, and beginning on Monday, when Lincoln and I met to discuss, we already knew what songs we were going to do in that particular service. We didn't necessarily know the order and all of that until Monday when we got here and we started discussing. Um, and it was, man, it was so heavy on me for that particular service. I felt this one song really strong. We had never sung the song before in our service, and I just felt it so strong. And then Monday afternoon, my oldest daughter Aislinn and I were in the studio, and again, just making sure we were putting everything together, and an old song hit me, and ironically, you sort of confirmed that song during a funeral this past week, and but it was in those moments where I just felt strongly that God was going to do something special in our service. I didn't say that you're not going to get to preach,
But
or anything like that.
You did tell me, when we were talking about the order of the service and some announcements that needed to be made.
Right.
You were like, I really feel like after the second worship set, it's going to be right for you to minister, or for God to minister.
Yeah, I felt strongly that there was going to be a ministering spirit in this place, and I didn't want you to, and at the time, I think you were thinking about maybe making some announcements after the second worship set. And of all weeks, I just felt real strong that it was going to be right, and it was.
Was there a point in the service Sunday that you felt it shift? Was there? I know it built.
Yeah.
And even from the outset, even the first two songs, it was not. They weren't throwaway songs.
No.
God's presence was there. I mean, I had people today even tell me, Pastor, we felt it in the prayer room. Like there was something different. Like it was.
Sure. I think. I don't think it was just the worship team that showed up prepared. I think there was a core group of people that showed up prepared. Obviously, we've been in a season of revival that's continuing, and I think that is also a huge part in all of this. But I will say, speaking of the old song, I do believe when Lindsay went into Praise Is What I Do, in my mind, that was like the first shift, and it like got everyone's hearts prepared for what we were about to receive later in that service. There was a word that went forth in that service.
Yes.
And I'm not sure that we would have been prepared to receive it had that first shift not happened. So, yeah, I believe when we went into Praise Is What I Do, it really softened the hearts of the people, and it took them back to a place of what our praise should do for us.
Yeah. It's, yesterday, there were not many dry eyes in the building. I saw people praying that maybe haven't prayed in a long time, or maybe that was their first move toward God, toward the altar. And you and I, obviously, we get to do this 52 times a year. And how do we distinguish? And I'm going to give you the question. I'm going to lob it to you today. How do we distinguish between, is this an emotional moment? Is this, we don't try to hype anything up, but some songs produce more of a response than others.
Sure.
I mean, that's just natural. That's why we like some songs better than the other. They all pull on our heartstrings. How do we distinguish between an emotional moment and a true God moment that we just need to get out of the way and see what God is up to?
Well, I will say in that moment of yesterday, I don't think anyone questioned what was emotion versus what was God. It was so strong yesterday. So on a practical side of things, I think, God does give us common sense, as well. And you can look at that audience. You can look at that congregation. You can see if they're connecting. And, sure, we like hype. but it can't all be about hype, because I tend to think hype is shallow. And what we had and what we experienced yesterday, it was so thick in there. It was so deep. There was nothing shallow about yesterday. And so I think by, again, on the practical side of things, just you can read that congregation well. You can tell whether or not they're really receiving this, or if it's all about a shout, if it's all about a beat. And yeah, and there'll be some that receive that. They love that. But yesterday, you said there was, probably no dry eye. I know this. I wasn't looking around, but in that moment after a word went forth, it was so loud, and I'm wearing in-ears, but I could hear how loud the response was from the people. And that's something that is just evident of how thick and how deep the presence of God was yesterday.
Yeah. I remember, we're in July right now. I want to say it was early part of this year, maybe February, another Sunday this year that I didn't preach. And in that Sunday, it was a shout.
Yeah, it was.
It was obviously completely different vibe, feel than what we experienced yesterday. And that's so cool about God. Like, He knows, what the church needs, where we are at that moment. But yesterday was just a thick presence that no one could deny it.
No.
I have a denominational friend, new to Pentecost. He was here yesterday, and I talked to him after church, and I didn't know how he was going to receive that, because that's not something that he experienced before. And he looked at me, he said, "Thank you for allowing that to flow today." Wow. That's when I knew, when somebody that has never experienced that understands, hey, it wasn't right for the word to go forth today. We had a word, but it was God. So your team yesterday, they were so prepared for that moment. I don't want to say prepared talent-wise. They were prepared spiritually. What are you doing every week to make sure that whoever is leading that week, whoever's on the worship team, what are they doing to prepare themselves to lead us into that moment?
In this case, getting ready for this service, we met on Wednesday night at 6:00, and yes, we are preparing, on the vocal side of things. But in that moment, you could just feel God's presence in this very room that we're sitting in. And one of the things I tell the team, or try to tell the team every week, is let's make sure we're fasting. Let's make sure we're praying towards the service, what's going to happen in the service, and already feeling what I thought might happen. I told them, I said, y'all, we really need to connect this Sunday. Like, I feel strong about where God may take this. And so with that being said, it really, for us, they heard me talk about this service in a spiritual aspect on Wednesday night. To, like, yes, we're working on vocal parts. We're trying to make sure we know our lyrics. But from here out, let's be connecting in spirit. Yeah. So fasting and praying, and it was evident. It was evident when they showed up yesterday that they were ready. And even in our little meeting that we have right before we walk out on stage, and I just felt it. I felt the team was unified and united in that effort.
Yeah. I think it's important that they, first and foremost, are connecting to God, but I love that their spirits seem to be connected. There was, you had a dynamic team yesterday. I'll just leave it at that. It was dynamic, but nobody was for the glory. It was all about directing that back to Him. I'm just reminded, even in the Old Testament, when you talk about flow or go, as they're leading the children of Israel out of bondage into the promised land, they were following a cloud, following the fire, and they had to be ready,
right, to
either stay, and there was no rhyme or reason as to when God was going to move and how He was going to move, but they had to be ready to go.
That's right.
And I pray that we can continue to be, sensitive to that. I think it's going to become more evident. I don't know. It's just growing. That's
Right.
all I can say. Just the presence, the power. Brother Mallory, he told me a month ago. He said, "We have launched." You know how he can
Mm-hmm.
he can do it. And anyway, we talked after service yesterday through text, and he was just, I'm telling you, it is off the pad. It is. we have launched. How have you matured as a worship pastor when it comes to flowing in the Spirit? Like, how have you matured? And you've been doing this a long time, but you know, you're the best at what you do. But it's more than just being talented. What does, how does that happen with you?
Sure. Well, I think that you definitely, or I definitely approach every week. I don't know exactly how you build a sermon, but I can only imagine how you build a sermon, which is, I would think, similar to the way I build a worship set. And that is, I want the songs to, have a kinship, you might say, among them. And so, with that being said, like, just starting from that moment, and then what I just am praying about and believing God for, when those moments arrive, I think now, the longer I do this, I've come to the understanding that God's going to surprise me either way. Like, it's like, you can never. I tell the worship team this quite often. I've learned to quit having preconceived ideas, or on where I think things are going to go, because the moment I think this is where it's going to go, he'll throw a left curve in there. And so I've just tried to be really open to what he's wanting in that moment. Obviously, experience plays a huge factor in this. There's really not anything, and this is not to put a feather in my cap. I think it just goes back to experience. There's really not a moment that catches me off guard anymore. And that's both practical and spiritual. It's just, I just want to make sure that I'm not a distraction, that I do not create chaos in those moments. So I'm going to do my very best on the spiritual side of things to be prepared for when moments like Sunday happen. But I also want the team too. Like, it's one thing for me to be prepared, but if the team that I'm working with that Sunday, if they're not prepared spiritually and practically, then it very well could be distraction. And Sunday is a prime example of where we don't need distraction. Like, in those moments, we could kill it. And so we talked through some things that I was already feeling in the spirit world. So I just go back to, I think experience is a lot of it now, but I've just learned to not try to second guess God, because it's
so good.
Yeah.
And I remember just a few nights ago in revival, maybe it was a Sunday, I don't know, but on that particular Sunday, you never brought the singers back up. Or maybe they were ready to come back up, but you never felt led to bring them out. You stayed on the keys. I don't even know if there was any singing. Like, I don't know if you remember what service I'm talking about, but it was one of those deals that you probably felt like in that moment, if I bring them out right now, it's going to be a distraction. Like, God's moving, God's speaking. We don't need a song. We don't need a leader. God's doing that. I want to close today talking, Brian Pound has been here, and then he was with us at camp meeting. And although I'm a terrible singer, I am a student of worship leading. I love to watch it. I love to experience when someone is good at what they do, and they're spirit led. And Brian, he even told us when he was here training our worship leaders that his goal and his job is to help get the atmosphere ready for the word.
Right.
And I watched him at camp meeting every single service. He would get it to a place. He recognized when he got to that place, and he would give the minister the nod. And every time they walked to the pulpit, there was nothing left for them to do except flow. And it was so powerful. I want to ask you this, and I know this is a little bit lengthy, but how can we talk to the congregants, the crowd, about stepping into that moment? Because you and I, we have a lot of responsibility on us. You as a worship leader, me as a pastor, even on Sunday, I had to make the decision in real time. God's speaking right now, like I need to get out of the way. How do we encourage, the body to allow that moment to flow? How do we encourage those that are in the audience to be, I guess, on cue, that when we feel that, when we go there, when the worship team goes there, I guess I'm saying is, how do we just scrap the schedule? Like what does that look like from your vantage point as a worship pastor to engage that audience more in worship?
The very first thought that comes to my mind is really like a simple thought, but it's sometimes hard for us to do, and that is to come to church with a spirit of expectation for what God's going to do, and not necessarily for us to receive what He's going to do, but what we can give back to Him, because we tend to wait on the singers or the worship team or an individual to like push the right buttons, you might say, so that we do respond in those moments, that we do, scrap the program or whatever. In all reality, if we really came to church with an expectation on what God wants to do in that service, then I think it's easy for all of us, not just congregants, to go, you know what, we had this plan, it's not going to happen, and so we're going to flow.
Yeah.
Instead of going, we're just going to flow, because we believe in this moment God can do more in this short amount of time than what we already had planned down the road.
I think it's a catch-22. I love the expectation, but we don't want it to be you so expect it to happen this way.
Yeah.
That whenever, just like you said, God doesn't. I'm not surprised anymore when God takes the service.
It's surprising, but it's not surprising.
Yeah.
Like, it's surprising what He does, but it doesn't catch me off guard that it's different.
The key is we have to flow with the Spirit. We got to know when to go. We got to know when it's time for the preached word to go forth, and we also have to recognize when God's ready to speak. I hope this has been a blessing to you. I hope wherever you find yourself, whether you are leading ministry or a part of the body of Christ, just receiving from your local church, you will come with expectation, you will flow with the Spirit, and God will do miracles. May this be your best day yet.